Okay, we called it. Our silo predictions? Correct. And we have even bigger theories for what's coming next. First, we don't think the air is actually poison. The whole outside world, we don't think it's what they want us to believe. And Daniel and Helen, we think we know why they end up in the silos. And lastly, those lights, that lift, we think the miners are digging to the other silos. And if we're right, everything is about to connect. So let's break it all down.
We got a lot of answers this episode, and we actually got confirmation that some of our biggest theories coming into season 3 were accurate.
Yeah, and it all starts with the bomb and Charlotte's mission. And they confirmed that it wasn't actually a dirty bomb, which we didn't think it was. DC seemed like it was operating normally, and if it was a bomb, it just would have been a lot more destruction than we saw. So we kind of didn't think it was going to be, and turns out it was a cover for nanotech.
Yeah, and I think the nanotech was surprising to me because I didn't expect that. I mean, when we saw the original imagery of the Gray Goo, it did look mechanical or digital in a sense. So I guess that was our first hint, but I think just talking about how advanced the nanotech was, and Stinson talked about some of his fears that it could be weaponized by other countries or even just random hackers, was surprising.
And also how inexpensive it would be and how it would be the more reasonable option. It's just not what you consider when you think of tech, and especially something that you would weaponize on a global scale, as being inexpensive.
Yeah, I think you referenced $300.
And they actually tested another country's nanotech, and that's where we got our second confirmation that Charlotte's mission was never meant to make it to its location or to its target. It was meant to go into that cloud of nanotech.
Yeah, it's a very scary thought, and I think Charlotte's reaction was on point. She lost dear friends and colleagues in that mission, and to know that it was well anticipated, to the fact that they had built a tunnel in between the two countries below them. They had enough time, enough forethought to do that, and to send them up there in a suicide mission was serious.
And I actually think that she was way too calm about it, and it's probably because she doesn't have the memories of the people she was on the mission with anymore. Because for her to still agree to be in the silos with them and to work with them after they essentially sent her to her death, she's the only one to survive. She was lucky to survive. They had to wipe her memories because of it. I mean, you would imagine she'd be a little bit angrier.
Absolutely. But at the same time, you're talking about the end of the world, and they're essentially presenting you an arc, something to get on and to save yourself with. And I'm surprised that they didn't jump on it quicker, Helen and Daniel.
I think it definitely makes sense for who they are, and especially what they've gone through. I think their plan of scaring them with the car that was driving itself kind of backfired and showed them, okay, you're not really here to protect me either, are you, right? And I think that kind of confirmed to them, no, we don't want to do this, where our instincts are correct. I also thought it was interesting, we got our first use of a artifact, I guess, to spark memory, in Daniel using the rosemary to bring back Charlotte's memory of her mom.
Yeah, and to think of how that's going to evolve, that artifacts are going to be so highly regarded and transferred through generations, is really exciting to think of. But you could also see the doctor, when he saw that happen, just the light bulb going off. So I'm curious to see how he's going to take that to the next level.
And if it's Daniel that takes it to the next level, and who knew that 300 years later, that exact method would be used to bring back Juliet's memories.
Quick pause before we get into what we think happens next. If you're enjoying our silo reactions, make sure you hit that like button, drop your theories in the comments, and subscribe if you're new here. We'd love to hear what you guys think is actually going on, because clearly we have a lot of questions. We finally got to see Solo this season.
And back into Silo 17, which I think we've all been waiting to see, not just Solo, but the kids as well. And it was actually the journey to get there that we think told us a lot about where the season and potentially the whole show is heading.
Last episode, it was a bit of a cliffhanger. We saw Patrick Kennedy and Lucas Kyle approach Silo 17, and then off camera, it sounded like gunshots, like a drone with gunshots. So we didn't know if they were going to make it. Thankfully, we did see them and they were okay, but that raised more questions because Lucas Kyle was shot.
And when they're banging on the door to Silo 17 to get in, one of the kids is saying, "How do we know you're not poisoned?" And he says, "I have a hole in my suit. If I were poisoned, I'd already be dead." And that's really interesting because, yes, he has a hole in his suit. Why isn't he dead? We saw when people would go out to clean, they wouldn't even make it over the hill if they had a hole or the tape wasn't strong enough, right? On purpose, of course. But they weren't even making it over the hill. So how did you make it all the way to Silo 17 with a gunshot wound without dying?
It's very reminiscent of our favorite show, The 100, where they had weaponized the acid fog. And are they doing the same thing here where they're weaponizing the poison?
I think so. We know they have the technology to put the poison into the silos. Are they also periodically putting the poison around the silo when they do those cleanings to act as though, they're dying because of the environment, the environmental factors, but it's actually just another means of control to keep them from trying to maybe get to the other silos?
And if you think about it, those are big events in the silo. Like, they're publicized, so whoever's controlling from Silo 1 would know, okay, we have to deploy the poison at this time.
And I think that this could be a huge revelation for Lucas Kyle. I'm surprised he's not more surprised about it, unless maybe he already knows.
I also had a moment when he was in the tunnel and he was looking to see what Solo's mom had done to cut off the poison to their silo. And I thought, is he going to get sick? Or is this like classic zombie thriller where somebody's bit and they're hiding it, that he's actually sick, but maybe he knows it's not something that can be spread through contact, because he did have his own interaction with an AI.
And we don't actually get to see what those conversations looked like. We just got to see his shock afterwards. But everything since then has really seemed like he's a man with a different mission than everyone else. Than Patrick Kennedy, who's trying to get up top, but also Juliet and, the Sims. And it just seems like, what's his motivation? What's he looking for?
Yeah, it makes me think that the AI he spoke to is different from the one that Camille is talking to. And I wonder if there is cracks even in Silo 1, that there's like a good and a bad kind of group.
Or whereas the algorithm that Camille is speaking to seems to be a live, active person, is the AI in the basement or in the bottom floor a recording? And is it just one thing that is hidden and saved for somebody who is digging and looking enough for it from those original people? Maybe from Daniel and Helen.
Daniel and Helen finally kissed.
And I think we've been waiting pretty much since episode 1 and they're not a date meeting for this to happen. I definitely see the chemistry. I hope it works out. It's the silo. I don't think that it will, but I'm very happy to have seen that development.
Yeah. I had a lot of questions, though, after their scenes, because Helen and Stinson actually get into a pretty heated conversation, and she flat out denies his offer to work and be one of the first 100 in a silo. So it brings the question, how do they actually end up there? Because we're fairly confident that they do, because some of their artifacts are still in circulation in the silo.
And they were comfortable with dying. Both of them said, I would rather the Gray Goo kill me than to live in the silo and be, down underneath the ground, right? And Daniel says, I'd rather die with you. So what would make them change their mind?
It has to be family. We saw huge themes of that this episode, especially with the rosemary to bring back Charlotte's memory.
But we also saw it a lot in both silos. We saw Solo having a lot of memory of his mom, and Patrick Kennedy kind of reaching him through, funerals and how you put somebody to bed and how you let them motivate the future and take them with you as you move on. But also with Knox and his father, Shirley and her pregnancy, we kind of saw all of these family ties being motivations for doing the right thing, for helping others. And Daniel and Helen kind of have a self-sacrificing decision where they've decided, I'm just willing to die instead of going in there and being the only one that survives. But could Charlotte be the thing that changes their mind?
Charlotte, or if you look at all those stories, it's not just family. It's about the sacrifices the parents would make for their kids. So do Charlotte and Daniel, or Daniel and Helen, end up having a baby? And that's why they end up going to the silo. Because right now, they don't care if they die.
And also, the motivations for why they wanted them in the silo seemed a little bit weak. Except for Daniel. The fact that Daniel identified that you should actually have 50 diggers instead of 10 that you try to make dig 5 times. Is that going to be proof enough to Stinson that we need this guy in the silo? Enough to possibly take him? And would Helen follow as a result? Because to just have the reporter that's willing to share the story of a lifetime, literally anyone would be willing to do that. So where is the necessity for her to be down there? But would she follow Daniel? And is he the one that's needed because he has experience with the diggers, because he created one in New Orleans that could not disturb the ground above them, and he has a lot of that engineer expertise?
And does that shape the culture in the silos 360, 380 years later? Because the engineers are so highly regarded in their societies.
And there really is no reporters.
True. And there hasn't been enough going on this season. There's actually another storyline that got some huge developments this episode, and it's the missing supplies.
So we know that a bunch of lights have been missing, enough to cut down the length of time that the silo would be lit up significantly. But also they discovered a lift in this episode, and we think they're both connected, and we think we know how.
It's clear they needed the lift to get the supplies out. And where would they want to take these supplies? It all started after Lucas Kyle spoke to the AI, the algorithm, down below. So what did he find out that he was able to inspire the miners in that way?
And he spent a lot of time in the mines, and we thought the clues that they were giving in previous episodes was that he was told they could potentially mine to another silo, that they're only legally allowed to dig so far, and reason would suggest that the reason they can't dig farther is because they would find one of those other 7 silos that are in the same pod, essentially. So what if he told the other miners and got their buy-in? And they've been secretly helping, digging that tunnel, lighting their way as they connect the silos.
And it definitely leads to a better understanding of his motivation to help Juliet. Because if he's putting all this time and effort to dig out to another silo, and then he has this way to just walk to them instead, that changes the game big time.
Well, and it does raise the question, did they bring suits to bring back Solo and the children? The whole motivation that they thought they were telling the algorithm was to bring the children back. How are you going to bring them back? And now Lucas Kyle's suit has a hole in it. So will this big reveal maybe be that they've been digging a tunnel the whole time, just like we heard in this episode Iran was doing as well? Is this going to come back up and Lucas Kyle's going to be like, don't worry, we have another way to get back to Silo 18?
Or does Lucas Kyle know that the air is not poisonous?
I think he might have learned that this time.
But did he know it before, and that's why maybe they're getting rid of the supplies to kind of force their hand that they have to go out or that somebody has to intervene?
Because we know when they spoke about Silo 17 being able to close off the pipe, the algorithm said temporarily. And so they shut off the pipe that prevented that silo from being killed within. But then as soon as they got outside, they still died from the poison. So is that what they meant when they said temporarily? And is whatever algorithm in the basement of the silo able to tell Lucas Kyle that? So that's where we're at. We were right before, and we think we're right again. The air isn't poison. Charlotte is the reason Daniel and Helen will end up trapped in the silos. And those lights in that lift, that's not a glitch. That's miners digging to the other silos. If all three connect, Season 3 is about to blow the whole world wide open. What do you think? Are we right, or are we overthinking it? Let us know in the comments. And if you love getting way too deep into this stuff with us, we'll see you on the couch.
Talk to you soon. Bye.